Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum, and welcome to another edition of Debunked here on INX Prime. So, there's a lot that we can touch on. The beginning of the new academic year, not only on the school side, but the madrasa side as well. There's a lot to discuss around that. The matric results that were just released, there'll always be a debate about how to analyze it and what does it actually mean and how does it reflect on the performance of the department and teachers and the like. Then globally, I mean, we've just seen some really significant developments in recent weeks. Yemen, the whole Venezuela issue, Greenland, and the list goes on. Even in South Africa, there's a lot of shenanigans within the DA ahead of the elective conference. But it is Aqsa Week, and that is what we're giving prominence to today on the program, inshallah. And to discuss this from the Palestine Information Network, PIN, we have Moulana Ebrahim Moosa. Moulana, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran, Moulana.
Before we talk about Aqsa Week, just to set the context a bit, right? A couple of months ago, there was the so-called ceasefire, and almost as expected, a kind of decline in media coverage. Even one could argue in the extent of activism, etc. Many falling into the trap thinking, well, things are relatively normal or better because of the so-called ceasefire, whereas the reports tell us another story.
Totally, and that's why many people have had this particular understanding that the ceasefire obviously put the resistance forces in a bit of a catch-22 situation, whereby they, due to the immense human suffering in Gaza, were compelled to be able to accept some sort of deal, to be able to end the daily cycle of over 100 people being killed on a daily basis, the amputations, the maimings, the total destruction of the infrastructure. But they were then forced into a corner to accept that deal, which they knew was loaded against them because of the United States administration pushing this particular line, and many of the Muslim countries also compelling the resistance to be able to take up such a role. Whereas we've seen all our expectations relating to the ceasefire kind of materialize, whereby the Israelis have control of more than 50% of Gaza. They're continuing on a very determined basis to destroy all the infrastructure within this particular area, mow down buildings on a daily basis, and then at will target people, target structures in Gaza without any consequence whatsoever. And together with that, we've seen a kind of extension or expansion of the fight back process from forces of Zionism across the world through lawfare, through propaganda junkets to the Israeli state in the wake of this particular ceasefire, and through the expansion of impunity within the Middle East region. So it's quite clear that the ceasefire for the Israeli occupation served the purpose of trying to take the attention away from the daily spate of genocide in the Gaza Strip and their pariah status in the world, and trying to take the wind out of accountability and global solidarity. And it's obviously up to global citizens and global solidarity to ensure that the Israelis do not particularly meet those objectives by continuing the momentum from our side.
So Aqsa Week, give us the history.
Aqsa Week is intricately tied up, Moulana, with the remembrance, as it is seen, of the Isra and Mi'raj, which traditionally goes along with the 27th of Rajab. That doesn't obviously mean it is any kind of night of specific observances, but traditionally people would speak about Aqsa and Isra and Mi'raj and focus more on the holy site during this particular period. So trying to leverage the focus of this period towards the broader issues of injustice in Palestine and the broader love of Masjid al-Aqsa is how this particular campaign was conceived. Came out of the Friends of Al-Aqsa in the United Kingdom about 6 odd years ago, and has been growing in strength and in its geographical impact over the past few years. I should mention that there is a parallel initiative to this as well, called the Al-Quds International Week. So if one could say that Al-Aqsa Week is predominantly gained traction in English-speaking regions, there is another one called the Al-Aqsa Global Week, which is taking place predominantly in Arab countries with a similar motive, but part of their initiative as well, to call it Al-Quds Global Week, is also to counter the idea of the Al-Quds Day and so forth, and rather focus the importance of Masjid al-Aqsa within the Ahlul Sunnah tradition and center it around the most esteemed event of the Isra and Mi'raj. So traditionally these weeks take place around the Isra and Mi'raj, the last week of Rajab, corresponding to whatever that may be on the Gregorian calendar.
The question that many would ask is that as important as the issue is, do campaigns of this nature actually have an impact? Is there value? How structured is it? How well thought out and planned is it?
I think that's an important question, and it gains more relevance as we progress from year to year, and we see the other contending important discussion points that need to take place during such a time. I think one has to look at global campaigns of a similar nature. For example, Black History Month in the United States and around the world, and other campaigns, whether it's relating to gender-based violence and the like, that gain traction over time. And I would feel that I have seen a specific benefit in terms of raising the level of awareness and raising the knowledge levels within communities. So for a long time, we always had to deal with very fundamental and basic questions, such as what is Masjid al-Aqsa, the complications of, is it the gold dome or is it the black dome? And people had long debates over this. And alhamdulillah, through, I would say, initiatives such as Aqsa Week, and through initiatives that increase the visitation levels of people to Masjid al-Aqsa, we could see that we've moved beyond those questions to a great extent, and that has now become common knowledge in society. So it shows for me that the power of focus, it shows for me the power of when we do not have an opportunity to learn about Masjid al-Aqsa on an ongoing basis, as opposed to, for example, Hajj and Umrah. When people would be going for Hajj and Umrah, people would traditionally have a means of learning about Hajj and Umrah through Hajj classes, through Umrah classes. When does that opportunity actually arise for people to learn about Masjid al-Aqsa, except if we dedicate a specific period to this? So I've seen the institutions who have taken it on seriously. They've really become experts in the subject, or have increased their expertise in the subject, and they've thereby taken their learners and taken their communities with them. Having said that, I think there's a need to reinvent every time, especially when a campaign continues for many years, and therefore it becomes kind of, as with everything, people would deal with such campaigns now with familiarity, and therefore there's a need to create something new each and every time we talk about such campaigns. And we've got additional challenges this year. I would say two of the big challenges being where schools traditionally played such an important role in this campaign, in South Africa at least. The start of the academic year, it's barely starting as we speak, and therefore, it's not conceivable to expect schools to dive into such a campaign with the full strength that they did with before. And secondly, the Gaza genocide means that there's been awareness of Gaza, about Palestine, about Masjid al-Aqsa on a daily basis for the past 2 years. So just another campaign amidst all of that is going to be difficult for people to say what's different here. But I would say, if we can discuss this further, one of the key points here is just reorienting our compass in terms of how we deal with the wider Palestinian issue and using Masjid al-Aqsa as the centerpiece or the key symbol to be able to orient our focus.
So, in terms of this week, year on year, is there a theme and what's the focus this year? Are there particular projects that are going to be rolled out, particular programs?
So the theme has been consistent, and it's been consistently kept as Love Aqsa. We've extended it to the love of Aqsa is something that unites us. It's a slogan that we've used, but it's really kept very broad and in a way deliberately ambiguous to be able to afford personal responsibility for this particular idea and also to keep in mind regional dynamics. So if one were to be very prescriptive for such a global campaign, one needs to realize that different societies around the world face different kind of restrictions in the way they can speak about Palestine. And therefore, to be able to remove those complications, it's just kept broad under the understanding of Love Aqsa, and thereby people can take it. Organizers in different regions will be able to focus it more to be able to speak to the needs of their particular society. So I would say, in terms of the broad focus, at least from my understanding within the South African context, I would look at, for example, this Aqsa week occurring within the context of a genocide and not decoupling in any way the events in Gaza from the struggle for Masjid al-Aqsa. That's one broad theme. The other broad theme would be the conditions at Masjid al-Aqsa and the very deepened threats to Masjid al-Aqsa. And I would also, as I mentioned in the previous response, just use this week to be able to reset our compass in terms of our spiritual connection and the Islamic means of activism to defend Masjid al-Aqsa and broader Palestine. And on a broader societal level, this has not really gained sufficient traction. But when a person would hear about Aqsa Week, they would think about it necessarily as a Muslim-only campaign. And I don't think that should be the case, because Masjid al-Aqsa is a microcosm of the struggle for wider Palestine. And I think this should resonate with wider society as we see the tearing down of the rule of law around the world, exemplified by the kind of very risky actions that have been taken by Donald Trump and the tearing down of the international order. We need to be able to situate the battle for Masjid al-Aqsa within this wider context, the breaking down of the rule of law, the exercising of naked power, and how this doesn't only affect a holy site such as Masjid al-Aqsa, but could affect many holy sites, the practice of religion around the world, and also the sovereignty of very important Christian holy sites in the Holy Land, such as the Church of the Nativity, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and so forth.
So, on the aspect of danger which you highlighted, does it run the risk of becoming just a rhetorical kind of slogan that comes up year on year or from time to time?
Yes, people would just speak about Al-Aqsa fi Khatar. People would speak about Al-Aqsa in danger and say, perhaps I heard the slogan 10 years ago. I heard the slogan during as was very vociferously raised by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, grant him the highest stage in Jannah, Moulana Ihsan Hendricks or Sheikh Raid Salah when he came to South Africa, etc., etc. But this is where the deepened awareness is going to be critical during this particular week, to understand that it's not merely rhetorical, and we've seen quantitative and qualitative leaps from the temple movement and the Israeli entity in their entrenchment of control at Masjid al-Aqsa. And we could go into some of this. For example, when we talk about the number of settlers in Masjid al-Aqsa, just look at a comparative study on how this has expanded greatly year on year since 2023, 2003 rather. Then we look at the sacrifice rituals that are occurring in Masjid al-Aqsa. 3 attempts in the past year wherein animals were actually brought inside Masjid al-Aqsa by the temple movement, attempting to spill the blood, or attempting to actually physically do the slaughter, as they would feel that this would be an essential prerequisite to be able to get the temple project into motion. And then we have the moves within Israeli society, Israeli politics, as well as international politics, to be able to change the identity of Masjid al-Aqsa. I take you back to Donald Trump's plan of the century, where he spoke about respecting the prayer rights of all religions in Masjid al-Aqsa. Somebody would look at that innocently and say that's talking about Muslim prayer rights at Masjid al-Aqsa, but there was a deeper intent at play already from 2020, and thereafter with the rise of Itamar Ben-Gvir to the national security so-called ministry within Israel, he's openly sided with the temple movement for prayer at Masjid al-Aqsa, and we should not be naive about it as if that is something that's going to occur in the future. The reality is that we've normalized these scenes from Masjid al-Aqsa, and Jewish prayer is already occurring in Masjid al-Aqsa in contravention of the internationally accepted status quo of Masjid al-Aqsa as being a Muslim-only place of worship. And this was recognized in international treaties. It's recognized in the agreements between the Israelis and Jordan. It's recognized in UNESCO documents. It was even recognized in word by the former US Secretary of State, John Kerry. So we see that officially that status quo has changed, and Ben-Gvir and Netanyahu attempt to actually change it further. And lastly, we have a resolution where pro-Israel Congresswoman Claudia Tenney introduced a resolution to the US Congress in October affirming Israel's sovereignty over the so-called Temple Mount, and calling for equal access and religious freedom for Christians, Muslims, and Jews at one of the world's most sacred sites. And the text going further, explicitly calling for Jews to have full access to Al-Aqsa and pray and perform religious rituals within its precincts. So when we look at all of this, we would then appreciate that Al-Aqsa in danger has been a slogan that has been raised for a long period of time, but there is definitely a much more ominous picture that meets us year on year, and especially during this Aqsa week, as the temple movement perhaps sees a window of opportunity right now that they did not see before.
We are weeks away from Ramadan, and for a number of years now, consecutively almost, every year during Ramadan, there would be some incident of a significant nature or the other, especially in Aqsa. What is anticipated this time around?
We speak perhaps as just observers and analysts and journalists. And if we were to put on another cap, we would certainly say that in all of these projections, we hope that they do not materialize, and we hope through our faith in Allah, we hope through His trust in His plan that these do not materialize. But Al-Aqsa has always been a hot period, or Ramadan has always been a hot period at Masjid al-Aqsa. I would say sometimes it's not as hot as it's actually portrayed, for the reason that there's much more focus on Aqsa in Ramadan, and there's many more international visitors to Al-Aqsa in Ramadan. So sometimes events would be amplified more than they actually as dangerous as they are, or what would be commonplace occurrence at Masjid al-Aqsa but goes underreported, then gets additional focus because of the amount of visitors at Masjid al-Aqsa in Ramadan. But having said that, the Israeli authorities exemplified by Itamar Ben-Gvir certainly see the scenes or find it unsettling that the huge amount of visitation to Masjid al-Aqsa in Ramadan is an expression of ownership. And the Temple movement has spoken about this very clearly before. That's why we try to increase the amount of Jewish visitation in Masjid al-Aqsa, because that is an expression of ownership, and that's a means to be able to change the status quo. The more Jews come to Masjid al-Aqsa, the more we would be able to agitate around the world to be able to carve up the masjid or to create a separate Jewish prayer space in the masjid. And therefore, when Muslims come in such huge numbers, it clearly overshadows all of these attempts by the Zionist settler movement. And therefore, we've seen already last year attempts to be able to curb Muslim visitation to Masjid al-Aqsa. 27th night last year in Masjid al-Aqsa was a shadow of its former self, not such huge crowds. People from the West Bank, to a great degree, were limited in their access to Masjid al-Aqsa. Greater policing, not allowing people to be able to gather in the Damascus Gate area of Masjid al-Aqsa. Those are things that occurred last year, and we can only expect the Israelis, out of their sense of intimidation, to replicate this. But particularly, one area that doesn't bode well, in addition to all of this, for this Aqsa week, is Itamar Ben-Gvir signing an order appointing Avishom Peled as the commander of the Jerusalem Occupation Police Force. And why is this significant? There was an existing police commissioner who apparently, despite opening up all the doors for the settler movement at Masjid al-Aqsa, according to Itamar Ben-Gvir, he did not go far enough. And therefore, a new appointment in the Jerusalem police, perhaps to deepen the offensive stance against Muslims during the month of Ramadan, and therefore trying to increase the provocations, and through the increased provocations and restrictions of Muslims, then open up the door wider than ever before to the settler movement to be able to achieve their objectives. So this is obviously a very worrying area to watch for Ramadan, and we hope it does not succeed in what it seeks to achieve.
What's the link between the Aqsa Week and the genocide in Gaza?
There's various levels, and we just spoke about at the onset when we spoke about the current status quo in Gaza, that the Israelis have managed to leverage negotiations in Gaza to then take control, create a buffer zone in Gaza, and to be able to extend their control over more than 50% of Gaza, which they would then use as a leverage for future negotiations. When we talk about phase 2 of the ceasefire, the Israelis already have established facts on the ground in Gaza that they can use as bargaining chips. And even if they retreat from the maximalist demands, they would still not give up what they have created in Gaza, and from 50% they may go down to 30%, but it's 30% that they should not have in the first place. And the parallel then is in the approach to Masjid al-Aqsa, where if any concessions are made at Masjid al-Aqsa and anybody retreats and concedes an inch of Masjid al-Aqsa, then this is merely a stepping stone for the time division project at Masjid al-Aqsa, for the spatial division project at Masjid al-Aqsa. So one should look at the way the Israelis have operated in Gaza, the way Israeli settlements have operated in Gaza, and then superimpose that on the same modus operandi that's been used at Masjid al-Aqsa to be able to divide the site. But in terms of Gaza, we would know that the struggle to be able to defend Gaza was framed in the terminologies of a defense for Masjid al-Aqsa. And we then should be aware that those who are resisting, those who have shown such steadfastness in Gaza over the past 2 years, have noted and have used as a key motivation for all of their actions the protection of Masjid al-Aqsa. And therefore, this should then fall upon us as well to then understand that if they have framed their defense of all of the sacrifices in Gaza in terms of Hada Fida'an lil Aqsa, Hada Fida'an lil Bayt al Maqdis, this is our sacrifice. We are willing to entertain all of these losses and all of these martyrs for the sake of Masjid al Aqsa, then this falls upon us in two ways. The first way would be how, when that line of defense of Masjid al-Aqsa has been stripped away. Obviously, perhaps only temporarily, people will find their feet, people will be able to resist, people will be able to become more assertive in this with time. But currently, it clearly appears to be quite bleak from Gaza, that front line of defense who responded when nobody else responded to these incursions at Masjid al-Aqsa, that has been stripped away. Who is going to be able to fill that particular void? But secondly, if they had done all of this for the sake of Masjid al-Aqsa until today, then they are without any kind of shelter. Houses are collapsing daily, walls are collapsing daily on people and continuing to kill people. People are drowning in the floods. People continue to nurse wounds and amputations without the required medical expertise and so on and so forth. Where is our sense of loyalty for people who did all of this for the sake of Masjid al-Aqsa? These were really the true guardians of Masjid al-Aqsa, and it is then up to us to connect the two issues, to be able to come to their assistance, not necessarily then predominantly just coming to the assistance and donating to Masjid al-Aqsa, but trying to materially and politically improve the conditions of those in Gaza out of a sense of loyalty for their role that they play on behalf of Masjid al-Aqsa.
Well, we are almost out of time, Moulana, but a quick word. I mean, Ramadan is around the corner and it's an opportunity for itikaf once again in Aqsa.
Yes, absolutely. Again, if those doors are being closed on Palestinians around the world, Palestinians particularly, and any other nationalities around the world, people from South Africa have traditionally played this role of visiting Masjid al-Aqsa in Ramadan. And this is, in a way, a opportunity to fulfill a kifaya responsibility on behalf of the entire Ummah. As I said, presence indicates ownership, presence indicates responsibility, presence indicates protection. And that's why an itikaf in Masjid al-Aqsa is beyond just the understanding of an itikaf in many other masajid around the world, because it serves all of these purposes at once, and it also serves to uplift the economy of Jerusalem that has been beleaguered by since COVID and subsequent to that, the lack of visitation in the past 2 years. So this is a clarion call for people to be able to increase visitation to Masjid al-Aqsa throughout the year, but particularly in this month of Ramadan, in the light of everything that we've said about the darkening clouds of conspiracy and threats that face Masjid al-Aqsa.
Moulana, shukran so much for your time and for chatting to us. Really appreciate it.
Barakallahu feek, shukran for the opportunity, and assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That was Ml Ebrahim Moosa from PIN, the Palestine Information Network, talking to us today about Aqsa Week, currently underway globally. That's it for Debunked. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.